Under the blistering sun of a Colorado morning, Anna Morales adjusted her stance behind the military-grade rifle. At 5'2" with worn-out boots and a borrowed jacket 2 sizes too big, she looked more like a lost volunteer than someone about to rewrite history. 40 elite candidates stood watching, waiting for her to fail. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to pause as she exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the shot echoed across the mountain range, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the spotter's voice came through, trembling. Dead center. The 500-meter target, untouched for 15 years, had just been shattered by the woman they laughed at yesterday. Shock rippled through the line of soldiers like a wave crashing into rock. The colonel's clipboard slipped from his hands. Captain Carson's smug grin dissolved into disbelief. Anna calmly stood up, dusted her jeans, and picked up a silver harmonica from the dirt. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Every eye followed her now. The girl they thought didn't belong had just done the impossible, and the world would never look at her the same again. Anna Morales spent most of her days behind the counter at El Rancho Diner, pouring coffee into chipped mugs and offering quiet smiles to customers who barely noticed her. At 26, she had never left Arizona, not really. She lived in a fading trailer at the edge of Tucson, with her grandmother, whose health had been fading for years, and whose stories of a younger, tougher life hung in the air like old wallpaper. The uniform Anna wore was secondhand and fraying at the sleeves. Her hands carried the calluses of someone who worked without pause and without complaint. Most nights she came home too tired to do anything but heat soup and massage her grandma's legs until sleep took them both. What no one knew was that Anna disappeared every morning before sunrise. She would drive her rusty pickup deep into the desert where her father had once taught her the only thing he truly knew how to pass on: sharpshooting. Not hunting for sport, but for rhythm, for stillness, for the discipline of control when everything around you screamed chaos. Her rifle was old, a bolt-action Remington that had belonged to her dad, cleaned so often, the metal gleamed like silver in the light. Her father, Roberto Morales, had once been an Olympic sensation. 3 gold medals, 2 world records, and a reputation so sharp it had drawn headlines across the globe. But all of that had disappeared the day her mother died in a car crash during a desert storm. Roberto never picked up a gun in competition again. Instead, he picked up Anna, just 6 at the time, and poured every drop of greatness he had left into raising her. They practiced in the open desert until the sky turned pink and the heat pressed down like a fist. She remembered him humming while he loaded targets, the soft wheeze of his harmonica as he played the same tune over and over. He never explained why, but Anna figured out later that it helped him find his focus. Danny Boy's Slow and Sad became the soundtrack of her childhood. It played in her head every time she took aim. After he died climbing alone in the Huachuca Mountains, Anna found a box under his bed filled with letters he had never sent. Applications to military schools, handwritten notes to potential mentors, even a few recommendation forms already signed. All for her. And with it, his harmonica. She carried it everywhere after that. Anna applied to the Tucson Police Academy first. They rejected her without an interview. Too small, not physically intimidating enough for field duty. Then came a private security firm in Phoenix. They told her she lacked presence, that clients wouldn't feel protected. She remembered the way the man leaned forward, trying to soften the blow with a smile that only made it worse. "Some people just don't fit," he said. "Some places require more than heart." That night, sitting on the front steps of the trailer, she pressed the harmonica to her lips but didn't play. The desert was quiet save for the buzz of a power line and the wind brushing through the cacti. She looked up at the stars and remembered her father's words. Champions aren't born when people cheer. They're born when no one's watching and you do it anyway. The next morning, she cashed out her savings. She took her grandmother's emergency fund too, with tears in her eyes and a promise to pay it back. She bought a bus ticket to Colorado, packed only what she could carry, and wrapped the harmonica in a flannel shirt. No one knew she was leaving, and she didn't say goodbye. On the bus ride north, Anna watched miles of country pass through dirty glass, dust roads, gas stations, half-frozen rivers. Her head was filled with all the things people had said to her over the years. "You're sweet, but you're not a leader. You're strong, but not strong enough. Pretty sharp for someone with no training." They meant well. They always meant well. That made it worse. She arrived at Fort Garrison with a bag full of clothes that barely fit, and a folder with nothing but her GED, her late father's photo, and a printout of the Delta Force recruitment poster. It had said they wanted unconventional talent. She had clung to that word. Unconventional. Maybe that was her kind of strong. When she stepped through the gates, Anna had no illusions. She didn't look like a soldier. She didn't move like one. But she knew how to breathe through wind shifts and track bullet drop over distance. She knew how to aim when her heart was breaking and her hands were steady, and she knew that if someone gave her just one chance, she wouldn't miss. Camp Victory looked like something pulled from a war movie. Endless rows of barracks, steel towers, obstacle courses, and flags flapping against a sky that seemed to dare you to back down. Everyone walked with purpose, with muscle, with years of training behind each step. Anna stepped off the transport bus into a sea of uniforms and hard stares. Her jeans were clean but faded, her boots scuffed from desert dirt. The other recruits towered over her bodies carved from gym hours and battlefield scars. She kept her chin up, but inside her chest the old ache of not belonging crept in like cold air under a door. They stared at her like she was the mistake that slipped through. Whispers followed her down the walk to registration. Someone laughed and called her lost. A tall man muttered that kitchen staff should use the back gate. She stayed silent and let it pass over her. Let them talk. She had something they didn't. Inside the command center, the temperature seemed to drop as soon as she gave her name. Commander Keller raised an eyebrow that looked practiced, like he had done it 1,000 times before just to make people feel small. He asked if she was here to clean. When Anna told him she was here for Delta Force selection, he didn't even pretend to hide the smirk. Captain Carson leaned against the wall, all polished boots and perfect posture. Her eyes moved over Anna like she was trying to solve a riddle she found beneath her. She asked if Anna had gotten lost on the way to the civilian job fair. Anna stood straight, but her heart pounded like a drum in a box. Keller barked out names from a clipboard listing past achievements like war trophies: Navy SEAL, Ranger, Recon, MIT. The room nodded in approval after each one. Then he got to Anna. Waitress, GED, from Tucson. The pause afterward stretched longer than the sentence itself. Someone in the back coughed the word hilarious. Carson chuckled and asked if she'd be taking coffee orders after the briefing. Anna clenched her hands so tightly her nails pressed into her skin. She wanted to speak, but no words would carry the weight she felt. Instead, she touched the edge of her harmonica beneath her shirt and breathed. The tone was set. The message clear. This was a world that did not want her in it. Every brick, every boot, every rule had been built without people like her in mind. She was not supposed to make it this far, and they weren't going to make it easy to stay. Outside, as the candidates were dismissed to training quarters, Anna lingered by the flagpole. No one talked to her. No one even looked her way. The sun was sinking behind the hills, casting a long shadow across the dirt field. She stared at it and whispered to herself the words her father used to say when the targets looked too far. Shadows don't stop the light. Neither will they stop me. The pull-up bar seemed higher than it had any right to be. Anna jumped, grabbed it, and fought gravity like it was trying to pull her apart. Her arms shook by the second rep. By the sixth, her body trembled. She got to 8 before her grip gave out and she dropped, landing in a cloud of dust and scattered laughter. A voice nearby said she could always try the kids' course next time. Another joked about lowering the bar for customer service staff. Anna kept her head down and moved to the next station. Her face was red not from the heat but from the sting of being laughed at like a circus act. The obstacle course was worse. The taller candidates vaulted walls, scaled ropes, and crushed times like they were born for this. Anna had to get creative. She rolled under one beam instead of climbing it, swung her weight sideways to use momentum instead of strength. At every station, someone called out a joke. A monkey, a squirrel, a house pet trying to keep up with wolves. Every misstep was met with snickers. Every workaround was marked as a sign of weakness. Commander Keller stood with his clipboard watching her every move. He spoke loud enough for others to hear, asking if creative problem-solving was just a polite way to say physically unqualified. Anna didn't respond. She couldn't. Her chest burned. Her limbs screamed. But she didn't stop. Not when she tore her sleeve on the chain-link wall. Not when her knees bled sliding under the barrier. She just kept moving. By the end, she was 3 minutes over the cutoff. They announced it like a final grade carved in stone. Failure. Another voice said, determination wasn't the same as qualification. That was true. But grit didn't come with medals or clean shirts. It came with pain and silence and a choice to show up again anyway. Anna limped off the field, her harmonica pressed against her ribs beneath the vest. It was still warm. She wasn't done yet. In the classroom, Anna sat near the back, her notebook open and her eyes focused. When the others spoke, they used acronyms and tactical terms like second nature. She listened, took notes, and waited for a moment to contribute. When it came, her voice was soft but clear. She explained a strategy based on animal tracking wind shifts and terrain reading the kind of instincts her father had taught her deep in the Arizona desert. Captain Carson tilted her head like she was hearing a bedtime story. Then came the sarcasm. A chuckle. Maybe she should apply for National Geographic, not Delta Force. The room broke into laughter, and Anna felt her stomach knot as if her body wanted to vanish. She looked down at her paper, suddenly unsure of every word she had just spoken. Every question that followed chipped away at her more. The commander dismissed her ideas as theory. Carson compared her instincts to something learned from rabbit hunting. No one defended her. No one even looked at her. The silence between laughs was louder than any insult. Anna swallowed the heat in her throat and kept answering. She had nothing but her father's lessons and the truth she knew from living it. On the final day, they called out names of those moving forward. The list was long, full of polished shoes and perfect scores. When they reached Anna's name, Commander Keller paused. His voice dropped lower. Her elimination, he said, was never in question. He made it clear, in front of everyone, she didn't belong. Not here, not ever. The words landed harder than she expected, not because she believed them, but because they were spoken as fact, like she wasn't even in the room. She stood, packed her things, and walked out without a sound. No one stopped her. No one looked her way. They had already erased her. But as she stepped past the gates, her fingers curled around the harmonica in her pocket. It was warm again, and something in her chest whispered that they hadn't seen the last of her. The morning air was sharp and quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against your skin. Anna stood at the fence line of Camp Victory, her eyes locked on the range where the final shooting test was about to begin. She wasn't supposed to be here, but she couldn't walk away. Not yet. The distance between her and the firing line felt longer than the 500 meters to the last target. She watched the others line up with perfect gear and confident postures. They looked like soldiers from a brochure. Her hands stayed in her jacket pockets, wrapped around the cold metal of her father's harmonica. The wind was steady, and she found herself calculating the way she always had, adjusting mentally for speed pressure angle. A shadow appeared beside her. Sergeant Shaw, tall, quiet, with eyes that had seen more than most. She didn't speak right away, just followed Anna's line of sight. After a while, her voice came low and even. "You're supposed to be gone." Anna nodded. "I know. But..." She stayed. Shaw studied her like someone measuring more than height and weight. She asked why Anna was still here. Anna didn't say much. Just that she'd been shooting since she was 6, every day. That her father was Miguel Morales. That he'd taught her to breathe between heartbeats and to trust the wind more than people. She said she knew she didn't look like she belonged, but if she could take one shot, just one, she could prove something real. There was a pause. Shaw didn't laugh, didn't question her. She looked at Anna like she saw a younger version of herself, someone who'd had to break into a room that was never built for her. She told Anna about an old regulation one buried deep in the manual. If a dismissed candidate set a new range record during official test hours, they had to be reconsidered. Shaw didn't say yes at first. She just stood there letting the weight of the choice settle between them. But then she nodded once. Just once. That was enough. Anna felt the shift. For the first time, someone wasn't laughing or dismissing her. Someone was giving her a chance, not because she asked loud, but because she had earned it quietly. And that changed everything. Anna walked toward the firing line as laughter drifted across the training ground like smoke. Some candidates stopped mid-prep to nudge each other, shaking their heads. A few made quiet bets under their breath. It was meant to be a show one last joke before they moved on to the real test. But Anna didn't hear them. She only heard wind speed, bullet drop, her father's voice in her mind. The rifle in her hands was unfamiliar, heavier than what she trained with, but it didn't matter. Her fingers adjusted the scope like she'd done it 1,000 times. In her chest pocket, the harmonica pressed against her heart, a steady reminder of every lesson carved into memory. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat settled. The first target sat 300 meters away, barely more than a red dot in the distance. She fired. The crack rang out sharp and clean. Dead center. The mocking stopped. Someone near the back muttered under their breath. The next target appeared. 450 meters. Slight wind from the west. She calculated without thinking, like instinct. Another perfect shot. By the time she cleared the 800-meter target, the field had gone quiet. Even the instructors were still. Commander Keller had crossed his arms, but his eyes were locked on her. Captain Carson was gripping her clipboard tighter with every shot. Anna kept going. Target after target dropped like dominoes. Then came the final one. The 1,500-meter mark. No one had ever hit it dead center. The wind picked up, slicing through the range like a challenge. Anna steadied herself. She remembered her dad's words. Not about proving others wrong, about proving herself right. She let everything else fall away. The mountains, the people, the noise. Just her and the shot. The crack of the rifle rolled like thunder across the valley. A second passed. Then the spotter's voice came through, flat with disbelief. Direct hit. Center. Silence broke into stunned gasps. Someone dropped their gear. Carson's face drained of color. Keller took a slow step back, like the ground had shifted beneath him. Anna stood, not smiling, not gloating, just calm. She had done what no one else could, and everyone knew it. Anna's perfect score rippled through the military like a lightning strike no one saw coming. Within hours, phones buzzed in offices from Fort Carson to the Pentagon. Video of her impossible shot spread faster than briefing memos, faster than excuses. Anna Morales, the dismissed waitress, had done what no candidate in 15 years had managed. Commander Keller sat stiff in a conference room while 3-star generals questioned everything about his leadership. His voice, once full of absolute authority, now cracked under the weight of regulation violations and arrogance exposed. He tried to explain away her rejection. Poor fitness. No combat experience, no credentials. But none of that stood against the cold fact of her score. Pentagon officials weren't interested in his reasoning. They were interested in results. And Anna's result had just rewritten the definition of excellence. By the end of the week, Keller had been reassigned to a remote logistics unit in Alaska. Not fired. Just parked somewhere far from influence where he could do no more harm. Captain Carson fared no better. Her record as the top female officer shattered beneath the reality of Anna's performance. Colleagues who once admired her now whispered about her downfall. Her next orders placed her in an administrative role, reviewing training reports at a desk far from the range that had made her famous. The Army had no tolerance for gatekeepers who kept out greatness. Anna, meanwhile, was flooded with offers. Interviews, medals, speaking tours, book deals that promised 7 figures. The media called her a new American hero, the face of inclusive excellence, a Cinderella story rewritten with gunpowder and grit. But she turned down every single one. She didn't want to be on magazine covers. She didn't want applause from people who never believed in her. What she wanted was to make sure no one else like her was ever pushed aside again. So she asked for one thing: a civilian instructor role at Fort Carson. No uniform. No rank. Just the chance to help others like her find their voice in a place that tried to silence it. It didn't make headlines, but she didn't care. She showed up every morning with her harmonica in her coat pocket and her father's lessons in her heart. She designed drills that measured instinct and adaptability. She created assessments that valued thinking under pressure instead of brute strength. She didn't raise her voice, but she changed everything around her. Soon, word spread. Recruits who didn't fit the mold started applying. Older candidates, Women from small towns, kids with rough pasts but sharp eyes. They came because they heard there was someone at Fort Carson who would see them, really see them, and help them be seen by others. Anna used her new position to push for something bigger, a scholarship fund for non-traditional recruits, named after her father, Miguel Morales Foundation for Precision and Perseverance. It paid for gear, travel, training. Letters started arriving from all over the country. Fathers asking how to raise daughters who wouldn't give up. Girls wondering if they could try too. The base culture shifted slowly. Instructors who once rolled their eyes at difference now started looking for it. They realized Anna hadn't just set a new record. She had opened a door. And once that door opened, it didn't close again. Keller never spoke to her after the reassignment. Carson did once months later, standing awkwardly near the range where it all fell apart. She didn't apologize, not exactly, but her eyes held a kind of understanding they hadn't before. Anna nodded. That was enough. Anna's story didn't end with medals or headlines. It ended with quiet mornings on the shooting line, with students she believed in, with moments where someone unexpected found their aim and hit something they never thought they could. It ended with change, real lasting change that didn't shout. It whispered. She kept her father's harmonica on her desk. Some days she'd play it before class. Just a few notes of that old tune. Something soft. Something steady. A reminder that greatness wasn't about noise. It was about purpose. About doing something that mattered. And doing it well, even when no one believed you could. Anna didn't need recognition. She didn't need revenge. She only needed one chance to prove the world wrong. And when she got it, she used it not to rise alone, but to reach back, to lift others, to make sure the next Anna Morales would be welcomed, not laughed at, not dismissed, welcomed. In the end, the real victory wasn't in the shot. It was in everything that happened after, in the way the system had to look in the mirror, in the way hearts opened, in the quiet, stubborn grace of one woman who had nothing to prove and everything to give. Anna returned to Arizona in the spring just as the desert was starting to bloom. The air was dry and warm, familiar in a way nothing else ever was. Her old truck creaked back into the trailer park like it had never left. Nothing had changed, except her, and everything. Her grandmother cried when she walked through the door, not because of medals or headlines, but because she was home. Anna unpacked, slowly setting her harmonica on the windowsill where her father once kept his tools. The shadows of his life still lingered in corners of the house. His coat still hung near the back door. His boots still rested by the chair. She didn't move them. Word got out before she could stop it. Neighbors she hadn't seen in years brought food. One man left a bouquet on her step with a note that simply read for showing them. Letters started to arrive from across the country, some from girls who had watched the broadcast and decided to start shooting lessons. Some from fathers who said, "Thank you for making space where none existed." Others came from instructors, from leaders who finally realized they'd been looking in the wrong places for strength. The military issued a new training directive a few months later. It was called the Rodriguez Protocol, a quiet tribute to Anna's mother's name. It redefined entry standards for elite units, adding metrics for environmental instinct, strategic creativity, and field adaptation. Not everyone liked it, but the results were undeniable. New names filled the ranks, names like hers. She never went back into uniform, never stood on a podium. When asked, she said she had done her part and was at peace. Most days she helped at a nearby range, teaching kids how to breathe between shots and trust their gut. A few knew who she was. Most didn't. That was how she liked it. One afternoon, she opened a letter from a girl in Kansas, 13 years old, skinny, awkward, called weird in school. She wrote that her aim was perfect, but no one believed her. Not until she saw Anna on that range. The girl said she started practicing with her grandfather's rifle and wanted to be like her one day. Anna sat with the letter for a long time, then tucked it into her father's old shoebox right next to his Olympic patch. She still played the harmonica some nights. Just a few notes, enough to fill the room with memory, enough to feel close to him. She thought about what he had given up to raise her, his career, his identity, his chance at being remembered, and how, in a strange way, it all came back around. Anna gave back, not by rising high, but by staying grounded, by making sure the path she carved didn't end with her. She didn't need statues or headlines. She needed the system to change. And it did, because she refused to walk away, because she took her shot. And when it landed, she didn't step forward alone. She turned back and opened the gate. Her name rarely came up in history books, but if you asked the right people if you went to the right ranges or sat in the back of a certain classroom at Fort Carson, they'd tell you the truth. They'd tell you about the woman who didn't look like a soldier, but changed the military from the inside out. Not with noise, not with fury, with precision, with heart. And long after the medals faded and the stories shifted, one thing remained. A quiet woman with a borrowed rifle and a harmonica in her pocket hit the hardest target in training history, not just on the range, but in the world. She proved that greatness doesn't always enter loud. Sometimes it walks in quietly and never misses.